Hello, everyone, and welcome to Poetry in Brief presents Three Women, Three Books, where we celebrate the launch of three women identifying authors and their books. So excited to have you all here. Our authors this month are Rocío Franco, Candice Kelsey, and me, Rachel Turney. I want to start with Rocío. We want to hear a little bit about your book, Where the Monarchs Never Die. Why this book? Why now? This is your debut chapbook, and why Arcana Press?
Um, I'm from Chicago, I think I've been an activist for most of my life. I've been a union member for 25 years. And of those 25 years, 12 years, I was a union steward. So I was always thinking about social justice issues in regards to the communities that I've served. So I served the undocumented for about 14 years until I moved to a union health fund. So I'm always thinking about the social issues that affect my community, like immigration, what is home, where people think you belong. And so I think it's just something that I've been developing since I started writing. And so it just came together when there was a prompt that through a publisher that was saying, "What is home to you?" And so went to look back at all the poems that I had, and I had a chapbook. It's poems that I've been working on since probably like 2020. And so, of course, it's timely with everything that's going on with immigration now and ICE and here in the city. I mean, ICE was here not, during the summer, and it was just a few blocks for me. And so, it's, you know,
Yeah, yeah. I work in immigrant and refugee support out here in Denver.
mhm.
A lot of what you said really resonated. I really like how you talk about home and belonging. And that is actually a theme that connects all three of our books. Where the Monarchs Never Die is about, to me, was about exactly that, home and belonging and living in a changing society, which I just thought it's really important to see how you see Chicago. And to me, that was like the real meat of this piece was seeing your view of Chicago. Personally, because I lived there before, but I think for everybody, because it's an important city, right? And it's important what's going on there. And then it really tied in with Candace's book, Another Place Altogether, which is also about a woman searching for home and trying to find that balance between places. Um, and I saw a lot of parallels with what I put together with Record Player Life, the B-side, which starts talking about how like I just don't feel like I fit in where I live, and then moves through like trying to find place as well. So I thought that was interesting that this idea of city and home really connected our work. Thanks, Rocio. Candice, tell us about your book, Another Place Altogether. Why now for this book? And is this your eighth book?
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
That's what I that's what I think too. Tell us about your work.
So it really is about feeling dislocated and then trying to resituate myself both geographically and emotionally. Um, so the poems really are about my home of the last 30 years, which was Los Angeles, and then how I had to move for about 3 years to the Deep South. And just sort of what that experience was like, the good, the bad, the ugly. And the result is that I've landed back in Los Angeles. But I think just writing through that shift, the geographical shift, and in the midst of that shift, my my marriage finally ended, and I say finally because it was in process, but I think that the geographical mirrored the personal in some ways. So a lot of the poems move between those two places, Georgia and Los Angeles, and two extremely different places, but both places that have, human nature doesn't change because of geography. So just looking at that. Um, also, I would say that it's timely in the sense that, I mean, we're all trying to, like Rocío, like you said, like we're all trying to understand what home means and how do we face this changing, often inhospitable, society. So that's what I'm trying to do there. There's a lot of resistance in the poems, especially around like gender, power, body. Um, Rejecting some of the negativity that is tossed our way as women. Yeah, so I'm just interested in the concept of transformation, how it is not neat at all, how life is super messy, and I think also that how like place can be both I guess both restricting as well as freeing, because without that restricting nature and that dislocating feeling from home or from who you truly are, it doesn't you can tend to become complacent, and I did. I think I became super depressed and complacent, and um, something about the shift in geography of being in the South rather than in Los Angeles awakened in me a fight, and I'm so thankful that it did. And I think also my writing awakened in me a fight. And so this book really feels personal for me. I feel like it really is sort of as cliche as it sounds, like this anthem to a new life for me. So I'm really happy with it. Thank you for showcasing it.
Yeah, I think it definitely reads like that too. It's a story of you and of Candice becoming Candice. Um,
Returning to Candice, yeah.
yeah, yeah. New Candice though, like Candice 2.0.
Candice on the canvas, yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
Great. And my book is called Record Player Life, the B-Side. This is my debut full-length collection that I worked very closely with Erwin at the Poetry Lighthouse on editing, which, oh, it needed a lot, it needed a lot of editing. Um, I've learned so much. When I put this book together, I had actually called it In Complete Disarray because it was just like kind of a mess of like ideas everywhere. But as we began editing and kind of putting things in order, I was like, oh, it has a theme. The theme is like time and place in life, and how we spend our time and what time means to us. Um, and so I'm so grateful to the Poetry Lighthouse for helping me every step of the way. We've been working on this since last summer. So it's been a work in progress. So we're going to move to our reading portion. And so to present Rocío is Joe Craig. Joe is the founder of Arcana Press.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to introduce Rocío and really honored to be here with all of you. I'm so excited that you invited me to be here, Rocío. So as Rachel was saying, Rocío is the author of Where the Monarchs Never Die, an incredibly timely chapbook that moves through immigrant and migrant life in Chicago in a way that is both like very grounded, but completely alive. There's tenderness in it, there's magic, and there's like so much love for her city running through it, even in the hardest moments that she explores throughout the collection. A little bit more about Rocío. She is the winner of the 2025 Arcana Poetry Press Chapbook Contest. Her work has recently been featured in the Rumpus. As she was saying, she recently was awarded and attended a Ragdale residency. And my God, like I cannot wait to see what Rocío has been working on there in whatever way she decides to bring it into the world. Where the Monarchs Never Die is also currently under consideration for the Juan Felipe Herrera Award for Best Poetry Book from the International Latino Book Awards. Beyond all of that, Rocío is just someone who shows up. She's a networking legend in the best possible way, someone who builds and supports real community and makes space for others without a second thought. She's kind, she's fearless, she's resilient, and so deeply connected to Chicago. And you can feel that love for her family, for her city, for her people in everything that she writes. Where the Monarchs Never Die keep finding new readers, and I really hope it never stops because it's an important one. And it was honestly just such a joy to work with her, and I'm really happy to be here to support Rocío tonight as she shares her work with you. And please join me in welcoming Rocío Franco.
Thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate that. And I think the only thing I didn't answer was why Arcana. And I think I think rejection is a skill. And so when I was putting this chapbook together, I was like, do I really want this to wait to see if let's say a bigger, more established name would take it? Or do I want to take my chance to see if I could get this out as soon as possible? And when I saw that Arcana was a newer name on the publishing landscape, and I saw that Joe does an incredible job with the Instagram page and with promotion and stuff like that. I was just so happy that they thought it was a good fit. So I really appreciate you, Joe. And so the first poem I'm going to read is called City of Broad Shoulders. It's a poem inspired by Audre Lorde's New York City, 1970. Like I've said before in other readings, I consider, I've born, raised, I never left Chicago. But, Chicago is that flawed family member that you love, but you have to call out sometimes. And so this is City of Broad Shoulders, 2024. 1. The stench of burnt asphalt fills my nostrils, as does the dust from the buildings this city raises to build corporate glass houses for corporate zombies. They knock down churches and remake them into condos for the suburban birds to fly back to. The priest said that the house of the Lord is sacred, but he forgot to leave out how the presidents in our pockets are holier. Everything can be sold and bought on the Mag Mile, especially the machine politicians. They grease their heels to slide away from the messes they make. The lines keep bleeding after all this time, like that boy across the street who laid down his life for a hand gesture and a promise of a family. The pole on the corner is a revolving funeral marker, and this city burns every day outside my window. Sometimes it's a metaphor that hasn't been fully fleshed out. Sometimes the smoke speaks for itself. Quiet here is dangerous. The sirens have become a symphony that we hum along to. What are we without the concrete and the trees that remind us that something beautiful can grow from a hard gray surface? But we can never get too comfortable or trust the spring when it arrives. Warmer weather brings bullets, and the news makes me weary. The mothers are not guaranteed their children. Have you seen the new development? Homes worth $1 million are built on land that has been taken over and over. Their children will be safe, and ours will be sacrificed. 2. Between two rundown graffiti buildings, the Grand Tower keeps being renamed but holds the same meaning. We can worship from afar, but your entry is at the behest of tailor suits and polished shoes. But there are a few things to love about this city. Miss Gwendolyn said, we real cool. We don't know them upscale or respectability. The basketball court holds our sweat, and the corners sizzle with meat. The children run around with red tongues and sticky fingers. The only reason we smooth these streets is for dusty gym shoes to run towards the horizon and not away from teeth-bearing badges. We want them to know our children are golden and free. The Gold Coast is too gaudy to own the lake that survived fire after fire. The only things I want to burn are the buildings that scrape the sky. I want to free the land and inch the border into oblivion. The border is what my parents crossed to defrost their dreams, but they didn't know how cold January could get. How you can't feel your toes and fingers at the bus stop. And the smoke coming out of your mouth reminds us how far we are from the warm pyramids of our ancestors. Would they have wanted this for us? Fighting to make a few dollars to buy a few bricks to keep our bubbles shiny. This city cannot turn into ash. Our children need to stretch beyond the pyre. So the next poem I'm going to read is called La Mariposa Monarca, makes a list of places to visit in Chicago. So I've always been captivated by La Mariposa Monarca, just the migration pattern between here and Mexico and other areas like in California where they go in winter. I actually went to the sanctuary in Michoacan, Mexico, back in the 2020 before the pandemic. And every time I see a mariposa monarca in the neighborhood, I always stop and, stare at it and spend some time with it. And I also, it's a symbol of our ancestors, carrying their souls during Dia de los Muertos. So this is La Mariposa Monarca, makes a list of places to visit in Chicago. Faded murals on 16th Street, stories of ancestors past, where the basketball bounces to the beat of car-boosted bass. Corner store where the hood kids buy their hot chips and Gatorade. Weeds in the neglected corner where another child was murdered. School that closed because it was on the city's red line. El taquero on Western and 33rd that hustles to get by. Not that bean sculpture or tower that tourist traps the rich. This pizza spot where they sell cheap slices, can't afford deep dish. El supermercado where the meat is okay, the fruit is bruised, but they take snap. Gold Coast so I can show them beauty they can't buy. The club where they play freestyle house and the dancing never stops. El erotero that scoops corn into a cup to send money back to Mexico. The projects they turned into mixed income households. Nope, not that newly gentrified neighborhood. The lake that brings everyone together in the summer. Church where the women bond over whispers. Parks where the black and brown kids play. Where hope never perishes, even when winter arrives and I fly away. And the last poem I am going to read is the third, Where the Monarchs Never Die. This book is a form of resistance as well. Um, I think poetry is important in a way that, I know that poetry can change lives individually, and I don't think necessarily it changes the world, and but it can change the individual. And I think it's important during these times that people find work that they could connect with. And so overall, my book, I hope, is seeing that resistance to the forces that are out there right now that are trying to take out people of color, and marginalized folks. And so this is Where the Monarchs Never Die. Wings carry mothers and fathers across deserts and rivers where they'll exchange labor for their child's wild dreams to build a life from concrete sidewalks, vacant lots bursting with milkweed and fickle seasons. The bosses will always breathe down the migrant's neck, forget you were descendants of warriors who farmed maize, frijoles, tomates. Remember that we conquered you and ransacked your lands. But migrants like the monarca spread their wings to show the bosses that borders are imaginary. And when they say go back, we say abolish ICE. And when they say this is not your home, we say abolish borders. And when they say speak English, we say chinga tu migra. Thank you.
Thank you, Rocío. Those are really beautiful readings. I think you've done a great job, and Joe as well, speaking to like the why of this collection and the importance of it now. So I'll open it to you if there's anything else you'd like to say about the collection, and then also tell us where we can find it.
Mm-hmm. So you could find the collection on arcanapoetrypress.com. Is that the website, Joe?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
arcanapoetrypress.com, and 20% off using the code 3monarchs, 3 all spelled out.
And through my website as well, there's a link, rociofranco.com.
Great.
And if anyone has any questions, I could go ahead and answer those if you like.
Yes, we're gonna do some questions at the end.
Okay.
So can you put that information into the chat though, so that people can get in the
Okay.
coupon code also? Thank you. And it's my pleasure to present Candice Kelsay, reading from her, well, it's not your newest collection, really, is it? Because she released Another Place altogether, but then immediately after that, right? The Biology of Leaving as well with Rockwood Press. I've been reading this too,
Oh,
and
thank you.
recommend it as
Appreciate
well.
Thank you.
But let's focus on Another Place altogether. A beautiful book. And I can see also, I've been reading your work, and, every time I read your latest collection, I'm like, oh, this is my favorite now. Oh, this is
Oh,
my
stop.
favorite
That's so
now.
nice to hear.
And I can see you changing, not just as a writer, but like as a woman, and like kind of finding your place. And that's why I said finding Candice rather than like, actualizing Candice, that
Yeah,
I do see you changing and like realizing who you are and what your voice is,
thank you.
outside of what everybody's been telling you, which I think is kind of like the era that you're in right now.
For sure.
So it's my pleasure to present Candice Kelsay, reading from her latest collection, Another Place Altogether, with Kelsay Books.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Also, strong, amazing women like you have had really good influences on me, so thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna try to read a couple poems, like one from LA, one from the South, and the the trips between. So this is LA's Bitch. My 75-pound boxer enjoys jumping into my lap any chance she gets. If anyone gets in her way, she nuzzles her head between them and me. Sometimes she throws a hip check and celebrates small victories by resting head and front paws on my legs. Exaggerated exhales, and moments later, a fabricated yawn adds flair to her conquest. I feel loved, even favored for a minute or two before I get up and tend to the whiskerless dry nose of my day, where I jump into the lap of this city, nuzzling again and again between the shoulders of an angel. I want it to scratch my ears, pat my haunches, and sit for longer than 10 minutes. Day after day, I am the bad dog, begging for approval. Sent to the backyard, stuffed in a crate, while Los Angeles pulses down the freeway, doing what it does with people who matter. Fate releases a hyperbolic sigh, yawns for spite. Still, I jump for keys at the door. Thank you. And this poem really, I think, captures the moment that my family and I arrived in Georgia after driving from LA to Augusta, and my 3 children, who only know LA's weather, experienced humidity for the first time. Parable with flags, humidity, and loss. In Arcana, the final odyssey, Atlanta to Augusta, I made note of the distance. Delusion burst. Atlanta was not a viable airport option. LAX had been a neighbor, mere blocks down Manchester. A braided nymph appeared on the side of I-20, asked, "What the fuck are you doing?" Disappeared into her cave. We crossed into Georgia where the flags were flying. Trump, stars and bars, don't tread on me. Go Dogs, and Blue Lives Matter. So Proud Boy bumper stickers really did exist, unlike yak racks or the Mississippi River waterline. Gun racks on trucks rising entitled Dixie Ferocity today. Pulling into our new driveway, the car was silent as a sacrifice or regret. Each kid opened a door to the southern summer's maw. Cruel greeting, Blade. I offered an invocation to the muse. Sing in me something familiar. LA kids don't understand humidity, damp and unnerving. They unfolded into the assault of reality's new address. To make it here meant giving something up. Memory, maybe. Like any good mother weaving optimism for months, I taught them how to unweave by time. And then here is a poem that was born from an unfortunate interaction I had on one of my visits home. And my ex-husband is a basketball coach. This is titled, Because Your Husband's Shirt is Ironed. Because your husband's shirt is ironed is the punchline of his assistant basketball coach meeting me finally. That's how I knew you were in town. I politely smile, turn to hug my former student who's often ostracized for being queer. The lunch crew misses you. 16-year-old Jaden tells me. I hug him again, quickly before the tip-off, to confirm my appreciation for the wrinkles he causes in the Emmanuel Presbyterian private school fabric. Later, at the pizza joint in downtown Augusta, my son orders a large pie and extra garlic knots. Rather than the garden salad my daughter chooses, dry, no dressing. A week before the homecoming dance, and 8 moms start a text thread to make plans. One of them texts, "I'm sorry, promises to be more organized next year." I retort, "Let's remember the dads don't have a homecoming dance group chat." Receive no response. Oh, how the South hates a wrinkle. I'll do, so hard. Okay, I'm gonna do A Tale of Two Cities or alerts from Citizen app while I commute between LA and Georgia. Los Angeles, California. And these are taken from Citizen's app. Report of suspicious box spilling pink sand on 3rd and Broadway. Citizen commenter suggests this is fairy dust. Man carrying feces barking at woman in Silicon Beach. Woman wielding a machete at Wendy's wants free Frosty. Man hit woman with bag of coins shouting "Fight on" at MacArthur Park metro station. Firefighters responding to reports of a man hogtied in a closet. These are from Augusta, Georgia. Report of man assaulted with Bible at Warren Baptist Church. Lone chicken spotted on Fury's Ferry Road. Citizen commenter responds, "That's my cock." Pickup truck with teenagers wielding swords and Confederate flag at Washington Road, Lifesaver. Woman dragging deer carcass wearing only extra tufts down Mulliken Road. Animal control responding to reports of wild pigs loose on Augusta National Golf Course. And Rachel, is that it, or I have one more time for one more?
You can read one more.
Okay, so this is back in Los Angeles. Back in Los Angeles, my Uber driver confesses he walked out of the Barbie movie incensed at how boys were portrayed, claiming the scene where a guy slaps Barbie's ass is unrealistic. He tells me down the 405 freeway that never happens. So I ask him why I have a decade's worth of therapy bills. And later I binge videos of postmenopausal orcas protecting their sons and a 60 Minutes segment on the British zoologist Lucy Cook, whose work with sloths reminds me Darwin was a Victorian man, branding the female species as a feminine footnote to the masculine main event. Oh, how I want to see a man call the female spotted hyena passive, coy, and chaste. See her laugh in his face after biting it off. Thank you.
Yes, as an escapee from the South myself, a lot of your pieces really resonated with me.
Thank you. I have come to appreciate many things about the South, but this was a moment in time that I'm writing about.
Good. And tell us where we can find your book.
So my website, CandiceMKelseyPoet.com for sure. And then also Kelsay Books, which is with an A, I'm with an E. Kelsay Books has it as well. And I do believe it's on the Amazon, but I would prefer people obviously use Kelsay Books Publishing. And they're great. Really recommend them.
Yeah, that's important. If you go directly through the publisher, usually the publisher and author do get a little bit more of the money back, which is really important for the publisher to keep operating. So
for sure. And also I have a stack of author copies if anybody wanted to just DM me too. And do an exchange too. Like Rocío, we could exchange or yeah.
And and my book as well, because they have ISBN numbers, you can request them for your library, which is a great way to support authors. You know, if you don't want to spend your own money or can't spend your own money and want to bring the collection to more people, which is what I did with Candice's book. So it's in my local library. I've just filled out a little form and they can get the book. And then to keep it in circulation, somebody needs to check it out regularly. So you go get it every couple of months and make sure that it stays there for somebody else to pick up off the shelf. It's a good way to support others. Great. Thank you, Candice. Okay, to present my reading is Erwin Arroyo. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Arroyo. He is the founder of the Poetry Lighthouse, and they put out a call this summer for their first round of collections, and I submitted, and I was really honored that he accepted my work. Erwin.
Hello. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and it's been a pleasure hearing all these wonderful poems. It really is an incredible work that Rocío and um sorry, I couldn't see yet Kelsey have put into their collections. I really connected to all of your poems, especially La Mariposa Monarca, because I'm from Mexico and I also find that an amazing butterfly. Um, so, anyways, thank you for having me here. It's an honor to introduce Rachel Turney. She is the poet behind Record Play Live, the B-side, which was released last month. Rachel is originally from the Midwest and lives in Colorado, and she works in education and refugee assistance. Her poetry reflects a life attentive to movement across places, across relationships, across moments that might seem small but reveal something much larger beneath the surface. Working with Rachel has been incredible. Her collection is genuinely enjoyable, and it's one of those projects, sorry, that reminds you why you do what you do, in the first place. Um, the poems are thoughtful, observant, and sometimes humorous, and often deeply, deeply moving. There's a real sensitivity in her writing, and her voice really feels both intimate and expansive at once, which I think it's something that it's important in poetry. So the title is very unique. The B-side, is very fitting because these poems capture the moments that are not always the center stage, but often the most honest. So I am incredibly grateful to have been able to work with Rachel. It's been an incredible journey. She's a very talented poet. Since then she's already going to release 2 more books of poetry. So yeah, it's fantastic. It's a great privilege to help bring this book into the world. So, well, I guess I'm gonna yield the floor back to Rachel.
Thank you for your very, very kind words, Erwin. Yes, this was my first accepted, and that really gave me, I think, the courage to be like, okay, maybe this is something I can do. I'm going to read one piece. It's a little bit longer and it's a little bit lighter as well. Give me city. Give me the bookstore in Manhattan with green banker's lamps, wooden shelves, worn red rugs on floors that need refurbishing. I want champagne and sheep's meadow, rain to sprinkle so that we have to run into the museum. Give me a spoon in fresh banana pudding, a ring cleaning appointment at Tiffany, shopping on Fifth Avenue. Give me ramen at 1 a.m. and the crowds of people, a bar with only 5 seats, a quiet train in a bustling city. A slight bow at the door, thick and spicy curry, a rooftop with a view of Mount Fuji. I want a nightclub at 3 a.m. that has cigarette butts on the floor, beer spilled on my black dress, schnitzel under the bridge by the water. Give me hot coffee and a cinnamon bun when the plane lands in the dark, cold blasts of air as we stack pebbles by the water. Give me a glass of wine in the window looking out at the harbor, a concert at Harpa. Give me fog under the bridge, burritos from a truck, whale watching at sunset, a ferry to Sausalito, giant trees, and golden sand. Give me a perfect flaky croissant. Let me travel through a dozen arrondissements, tennis on clay courts, the twinkling lights. Hot meat on corn tortilla, fingers covered in fat and sauce, verdant parks and rich black mole, museums and traffic noise. Give me the best cities in the world so that I can walk 12 miles a day, eat the most exquisite food, find myself and lose myself among your skyscrapers on the streets. Give me cities so that I can feel alive. Thank you. You can get Record Player Life directly from the Poetry Lighthouse website and at all major booksellers. I think it's coming to Barnes and Noble. It's already there, and Waterstones coming soon, I think.
Yeah, Barnes and Nobles, foils. Well, most of those are Waterstones in the UK, but you can also find it in independent bookshops in anywhere in your local bookshop, which also is good for the local community. So yeah.
Thank you. And do you have an open call right now, Erwin, or it's coming soon?
Yeah, it's coming soon on the 15th of this month, April. We're going to open submissions for poetry collections since last year. So it's pretty, I would invite you all to share, spread the word if you know anyone who wants to publish their poetry collection.
Great, thank you. We're going to open for questions now. You can ask everybody, you can ask one person.
I have a question for Rocío. Rocío, it's my first time interacting with your poetry, and I'm so excited to have this ahead of me to read and enjoy. One thing that struck me about the poems you shared is this rich sound element pulsating through your poems. And what do you owe that to, and how do you work on that, and where do you find that in your writing? How do you generate that? Does that come naturally to you? Is that something you work on?
Um, I think it's like instinctual for me. So I'm
Mhm.
not a traditionally trained poet, so a lot of my poetry craft, besides reading, is observation
Mhm.
of my surroundings. And then, my first drafts do come pretty fast, but I do spend a lot of time in my revision, like a lot of time. And so, yeah, it's part instinctual observation and, reading other poets.
Do you ever read your work out loud as you're editing or as you're revising?
Yes, actually, I do. I do. And I learned this from, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Jessica Salgado. She's a poet out of Los Angeles. And she recommended that we record ourselves reading our poems. And so I do that. I do that before I submit, or once I think something's done, I'll record myself and play it back to see how it sounds.
Oh, it's really interesting. Thank you.
Hmm.
May I ask, Rocío, do you have a musical background?
No, I don't.
No.
But I do. I do. I'm a lifelong. I think many of us are, but I am a lifelong music lover. A lot of, and then I'm not. I like music across genres, but I do. One of the things that my husband and I like to do, and since we've met, is we do go to a lot of concerts. That's one of our favorite things to do. So I do listen to a lot of music, and I do pay attention to lyrics. And so yeah, I think maybe some of that is attributed to my lifelong love of just music in general.
The second poem that you read, I heard it as a song. It was just in my head with this musicality, and it was like you were singing it, so it was quite amazing.
Thank you.
I've got a question. This was based off of Rocío, this is based off your work, but I think this could also be for any of y'all who write about more than one location. But first, like specifically to you, Rocío, the poems and Where the Monarchs Never Die that take place in Mexico. I was curious, did you write them during your trip to Mexico or was that afterwards? And then the more general question is, how is it different for you writing poems that take place where you physically are, like in Chicago, versus poems that take place where you have been, but maybe aren't necessarily in the moment?
So, the poems that did take place in Mexico, I think I might have, since it was so long ago, I believe I might have written my first drafts right after I had visited those locations. And then, so I could remember like the feeling and like the sounds and the sights and stuff like that. And then, of course, I spent a lot of time in revision when I came back home. And I don't know if I would have been able to write those poems if I hadn't been, of course, because it was like a very, so I wrote the poems that are in Mexico. So I'm a cancer survivor. And so I was struggling a lot with post-treatment, a lot. And so my friend had invited us to meet up in Michoacan because she was going to move there. She was going to check on the apartment she was getting built. And so when I went, and it was always one of my dreams to go visit the sanctuary because I just heard it was so beautiful. And that kind of served as kind of like a corrective experience to everything that I had experienced in the like 2 or 3 years previous with treatment and everything like that. I was really struggling a lot. And so I was just like, nature and the trip was very like healing for me. And so, yeah, that was the inspiration behind those poems specifically in Mexico. And then, Chicago is like one of my favorite things to write about because I feel like I can't extricate myself from Chicago. Like Chicago is just me. I think a lot of us feel that way. A lot of us writers from Chicago, when we talk about Chicago, it's like you can't talk about you yourself as a poet or a writer if you don't talk about Chicago at the same time.
Candice, do you want to speak to that question as well? Do you write at the time you're in a place or reflectively?
Oh, I think it's both for sure. I mean, honestly, I don't know how else to live besides just reflecting. I mean, I'm constantly reflecting, I'm constantly rethinking, imagining, putting into words emotions and feelings and scents and, visual, elements. Um, I would say though, moving from away from LA and then not being ready for how much I would miss certain poetic experiences from Los Angeles. For example, being at Dodger Stadium is a very poetic, healing, important to me for many reasons. It's complicated, of course, but just to be away from that and not have access to something that gave me so much joy and so much history entwined with who I was in my 20s when I moved out there and where I was when I left. And it sort of said goodbye to us in the final game my family went to, and then we moved the very next day. There was an earthquake that night, and we were up in the top, cheap seats deck, and we were just swaying to this earthquake at Dodger Stadium, and we're like, wow, it's saying goodbye to us as we leave. And then when I moved back, there was an earthquake the day I got back. So I know that's all coincidence, but there's just this deep kind of mysterious connection that I have to this place. And so I am thinking about it a lot. It's where I grew up. I mean, from my 20s to my 50s is where, this is home to me. Um, and it's not home to anyone, in my, immediate family. So, well, yeah, sort of. But places like the Huntington, botanical gardens and library was very important to me as well when I lived here. And so when you wake up in another place 2,000 miles away and you realize, oh, I don't have access to that meaningful location, it really activated my mind in that, well, I can recreate those places through language and through writing. So I think in the moment, yes, I'm appreciating, but I'm storing away what it means to me. And then the second you're away from something, or the second you return to something that's meaningful, for me, that's the most generative in terms of writing. How about you, Rachel?
I write a lot on the plane because I feel like it's not real time. Sometimes I'm gaining back an entire day I already lived. So I
Right.
feel like, oh, this is a place where time is fake. So I can spend time writing. Sometimes it's hard to give ourselves permission to spend time in poetry even. And so yeah, I write a lot on planes, and I think it's a great place to write because you're trapped.
Yeah, it's such a liminal space too. And yeah, you are trapped. But and there's nothing so pleasant about being on a plane. So I think that when you bring the writing to it, it really helps the situation.
Yeah. Thanks for that question. Stefan or Stephen? Was it
Stephen, thank you.
Stephen?
And thank you. Thank you for the answers.
Erwin had a question.
Yeah, I have actually two questions, but I guess first I would like to ask Candice. From what I've heard, you've written quite a few poetry collections so far. So I'm curious to know how much your writing has changed over the time in terms of how you have expanded your style, or how, do you feel more comfortable writing now, or because sometimes it gets easier, but it's nice to know um, where you're going. And also another sort of question for you would be, um, how do you find the material after, you've written already so much? So how do you keep on finding ideas, inspiration? That's something that I'm interested to know.
No, thank you so much for asking that. So I started writing poems in 2016. There was a personal life kind of tragedy situation that inspired me to start writing poetry. And that was 2016. And then my first book was 2020. But in that window of 2016 to 2020, the floodgates opened and I couldn't stop. And I just generated hundreds and hundreds of drafts, um, and would get a few ready for publication. And then by the time like 2019 came around, I just realized, okay, potentially I have something here and this is what I want it to focus on. And so I curated it in that way. But then I have this storehouse of all these poems that I don't know what was happening. It was weird and everything was flowing. And so I often will come back to those and revise them, almost they don't even, mirror anything that they were originally, but the little germ of an idea, the little nugget of the image or the word or the sound or the emotion can now be opened up in a way that is authentic to me in this time period or season of my life. Um, so what I have noticed is I don't know, but I hope my writing has gotten better. There are days where I think my writing has gotten worse and why can't I write like I did in 2017? And then there's days where I think, okay, I'm getting a hang on this. These poems are showing some growth in this particular area. But I think that's part of being a creative is, it's very hard to assess, and I don't even know that it's that important to assess whether your work is better or worse, right? That's such a very limiting way to look at it. I think the way I view it is, am I exploring and taking risks and looking at new ways to express things that pop into my brain. So in other words, am I not constantly going back to the same patterns, the same fixations, the same approaches to line or approaches to metaphor or sound or form? So for me, I love to play with form. So it's really, and I love to read other poems. So I'm constantly reading other people's work. I'm constantly thinking about new ways to put stuff together. So in that way, I think that my mind and my repertoire has expanded because through communities like this, I'm reading so many more voices. And that, of course, I think is informing and growing me as a writer, hopefully. I don't know that that's manifests, but it's in there. It's happening, I think, in my brain. In terms of running out of things to write, I used to have this fear that used to have this fear that I would run out of things and that would it would dry up. And that was like back in 2018, 2019. And it hasn't happened yet. So I don't know if anybody else can relate to that. Like I will think after I write a poem that I feel really good about or I think is ready to go out into the world, I'll say, well, that's it. Okay, it's been a fun ride. I guess I'm done. There's literally no other thing that will ever come out of my mind. And then, a month later I have 6 more poems I'm excited to work on. So for some reason it keeps generating. And I think the reason is because I think as creatives, we see the world as something that needs to be expressed, right? We need to express this thing we're experiencing. And so that's never going to change. There's that creative urge to, just to create. But I think the other thing is like, I would say like life, right? I mean, my goodness, just in a day's time, look at headlines, look at the people you run into, look at, the surrounding urban landscape or even the nature. I mean, there's no end to the amount of things to think about and learn about and wonder about and write about. So, I think it's just we live in a world of bounty and not all of it's positive, of course, but like there's just so much to think about and write about that I can't imagine ever not having something that I want to express. Yeah. I'm curious what the other poets think about that too.
Rocio, I don't know if this is for sure true, but I think we all came to writing, publishing at least a little bit later. So I think that's interesting. Can you speak to that, Rocio? Like, why now for this book? In that, like, why didn't you have something out before?
Well, I haven't been writing really long. I mean, I came to writing in what, 2019? And it was because of that, out of necessity, because of, my cancer survival. And then, I was what, 39 when I came to it. And, I had been involved, I've had been living my life. And so I think, these poems have been germinating for a while. And I didn't become a poet until after after treatment. And I've been publishing individual poems in magazines. And my goal was always to write a book, but what I really wanted to publish was my full length on cancer survival. But for some reason, um, this just came about like naturally. I had, because I do like to write a lot of social justice poems because of my work in labor. And so, yeah, I don't know. I've been very lucky to have the success that I've had so far. I have put in the work, but it's, a lot of it is luck and a lot of it is persistence. A lot of it is taking rejection as a skill and not letting it stop you from going on to the next opportunity. So it's a combination of a lot of things. I can't really speak to that was one specific thing. It's just I just want my work out there. I want my work to, people to connect to my work. That's one of my favorite things besides just writing it. I do like to read my poetry and I like to connecting to other folks that enjoy reading it or have found something, compelling in it.
Sandra, did you have a question?
Sorry, a little trouble unmuting. There I am. Yeah, Rogia just spoke to a little bit of that. And maybe all of you could expand on it. She just talked about liking to read and connecting with others. And so there is this process of us writing to express, to integrate, to grow. But then why are we putting it out there into the world? I go to a lot of open mics and there's always someone who gets up tearfully and says, I've been writing for 15 years. This is the first time I'm ever reading a poem. And everybody's, yeah, and so there are lots of people who like write in their closets or in their diaries so there is the aspect of us wanting to grow as writers and say and all of that. But then there's this wanting to be seen, at least that's how I think about it for myself, and also wanting to connect and needing something back. And I'm just wondering what each of you think about that. What's it like to have your work live out there? What's it like, whether it be via social media that you're getting the responses or via Zoom or whether you're like in an in-person setting. Um, what is that all about? Because I feel for me anyway, that's I've been thinking about that because I came to putting my stuff out there and really trying to develop even later than it's like, oh, I was 40 when I started. I was thinking, so like I'm 70 and I started sort of like as I was gearing up to retire at like 69, even though I dabbled here and there, but and then jumped sort of off a cliff. And I've been thinking about, what do I need? And there's some need to be seen, at least for me. And that has to do with connecting with people too. So I'm wondering about all of your experiences, not just writing, but putting it out there.
I'd be happy to answer. That's such a great question, Sandra. And by the way, Sandra, if you haven't read her work, you need to. She is a tremendous poet, and you have a book coming out soon too, right? Um, I
Like
I would go ahead.
it's called Unfurling the Scroll of Seven Decades, and it'll be up for pre-sale. It's with Finishing Line Press, and they take a while. So, it'll be up in like October, and I'll keep the heads up. I decided not to go a self-publishing route, and I got it accepted like a year ago by Bottle Cap, but they didn't do any ISBN numbers, and I felt like, wow, I just want to get it out more. I didn't expect to make a penny from this. And if I wanted to make money, this isn't what I'd be doing. I had a 40-year career as a psychologist and psychotherapist that I gave up to be creative.
Mhm.
Also, because this is a chapter in my life to do it. But anyway, I'm
Yeah,
excited about coming out. Thank
absolutely. Yeah. I would say like for me, I grew up in a my nuclear family. Growing up, I didn't have really a voice for a variety of reasons. So for me, writing and putting my work out there is a way for me to project my voice and to speak because I felt silenced and shut down and invisible in my early years. So that's really important to me. And then also in my in my former marriage, there was a lot of deception, unfortunately, that I uncovered. And so for poetry for me is about revealing truth and really obliterating the way we hide things. That things should not be hidden, things should not be secret. And so it's a way of truth telling for me, even as painful and as um, I guess um, unsettling that can be at times. But I'm really drawn to using my voice, uncovering things that are hidden, or that sort of thing. And then after my first book came out mid-COVID, and then after COVID, and just being so isolated and seeing the damage that did to my own students as a teacher, and my children, I felt like, this is such a great way to have community and to be, like you said, be seen and to be with others and hear others' stories, hear others' voices, and hear their truths. And so for me, it's really, I'd say the lion's share of why I like to see my work out there is because it opens doors to meet people like you guys.
Rocio, do you want to speak to that as well? I always see you doing things in your community online.
Yeah, I think it's in terms of sharing my work, I think it's a lot to do with community building. Um, I also like to demystify poetry. Like, I don't believe that poetry is this thing that should be gatekept. And so I do want to be witnessed. I did grow up in a very like emotionally and physically abusive home too. So I think a lot of it has to do with that. It's part healing, part being witnessed, but a lot of it is demystifying it too. Like I don't want people to tell I don't want to be the only one telling my story. I want people to feel like they could tell their own story in ways that are unique to them. So a lot of them is about, demystifying and, building community. Because I'm not the writer that I am without community. I mean, a lot of writing is solitude, but like, I don't want to, it's not where I get my, it's joyful to write, but I think the most joyful part is connecting with others.
Yeah, great answer and great mission to demystify, poetry and being part of the community. I can't speak for all women, but like my journey as a woman is that we almost have to like get permission to take time to do things we want to do and to fucking speak. So like these other two writers, I came to it later in life as well, finding that voice. Thank you all so much for being here. Please pick up Rocío Franco's debut chapbook, Where the Monarchs Never Die, out with Arcana Press. Candice Kelsey's Another Place Altogether with Kelsay Press. And my debut, full-length record player Life, the B-side with the Poetry Lighthouse. Please join us next month, like same time, same place, same link, but May 2nd, which is the first Saturday in May. We'll be celebrating the launch of Chandra Grace Joner's Naked in Turkey, which is not poetry, but is fiction mixed with fairy tales. And there are many poetic elements to your book. And we'll also be celebrating To Be a Woman, my book coming out with Red Rose Thorns. And then I'll have one more woman identifying author here who will be sharing her voice as well. Thank you all so much for being here. We'll stay on for a little bit, but we'll stop the recording.